Well, hello, everybody. Thank you for coming today again for another session of the Idea Networking session, which stands for Instructional Designers and Educators Alliance. My name is Sharon Chaden Glass, and I am an instructional media designer for Sinclair Community College in Dayton, Ohio. And as we were chatting just before the session started, happy Teacher Appreciation Week. What better way to appreciate your job as a teacher is looking for a way to get out of it. Just kidding. Just kidding, but not kidding. I don't know. Depends on how you feel about it. If you love what you're doing, I fully support you doing it. But if you're looking for something else and you really need something else, I'm glad you're here. So today we did have 3 guest speakers, but one of my guest speakers was not able to come at the last minute. So I'm still happy to present 2 guest speakers today. The first is Rachel Smith, and the second is Yesenia Lawrence. And I will give them time to share their stories. And please write down the questions that you have. And after they share their stories, we will go into breakout rooms and you can ask specific questions to either Yesenia or Rachel, or you can also hop between the rooms if you really want to talk to both of them. You're able to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Rachel. I'm going to spotlight you and give you the floor.
All right. Well, hello. I am Rachel, and I was saying just a minute ago, I am in sunny South Carolina. So I'm very sorry to all of you that have had nasty weather. Feel free to come visit. It's in the 80s and sunny, so if any of you need that. I am currently an instructional designer at a company called American Credit Acceptance. It's a fairly large company. It's over 1,500 employees, a couple of locations. And I am one of 3 of their in-house instructional designers. Started off in early childhood education. That was my undergrad. Taught elementary for a few years, and then went back to school. I kept teaching while I was in school, but I got my master's degree in teaching English as a second language, and then transitioned to middle school, which I didn't ever really intend to be in middle school. I just wanted to move into ESOL. And that was what was available at the time that I was applying. And I ended up really liking the school that I was at. And I've been at that school for the last 4 years. So I did end up leaving mid-year. I left at the end of February, started my new job at the beginning of March. And yeah, so that's kind of my story. It's very similar to a lot of people this year. It kind of just got to be too much. The reason that I left was just the expectations for teachers just gotten way too much. And I felt like I had just kind of lost the joy that was teaching because of all the busy work I was asked to do and all the extra things, managing behavior and doing bus duty and all, you guys get it, all that kind of stuff. And it led me to instructional design. And I really enjoy the creative aspect of instructional design. And there's a little bit of like problem solving, a little bit of like, I say it's the perfect amount of face-to-face time with people and then independent work time that you can kind of just chill and be by yourself. So yeah, really loving it.
Rachel, I'm wondering if you could to speak just a little bit more, because I know we've had so many people ask questions over the last 2 years that we've been doing this, and you touched on something that people ask about all the time about leaving mid-year.
Yeah,
I don't know if I can do it. Poor babies, Would you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I mentioned that intentionally because I do feel like a lot of people struggle with that. There's a lot of shame in teaching around leaving mid-year. For me personally, I was on LinkedIn. I got on LinkedIn at the beginning of the year, beginning of the school year, because I knew August, September that I wanted out. And I was, we're all going, like we're all looking. So I didn't want to, I saw so many teachers that wanted to wait and finish out their contract that I was more of a strategy for me. I didn't want to compete with all of the teachers that were waiting till summer because I knew that there was going to be a whole lot more job seekers then. And I was nervous, but I it was almost neutral. It was like I didn't have any type of pushback from my admin. I wouldn't say they were wonderful and supportive and were glad that I was leaving. I wasn't the first teacher at my school to quit this year. I was like the fourth or the fifth that had already left. So I think my admin kind of knew what was up. And I was communicative with them. I said, I had asked to make some changes in my personal, like what was being asked of me, and that didn't happen. Some of the things that were stressors for me that I felt like were too much that I shouldn't be asked to do, etc. And it was kind of like the response was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, that's hard for you, but there's not really anything we can do." And I said, "Okay, well, just to let you know, I am looking for other jobs." And I had told them that I wouldn't be returning the following year because I didn't really anticipate getting a job as quickly as I did, I guess. And then when it happened, they weren't completely caught off guard. I am not sure yet because it's been fairly recently. I'm not sure what like repercussions there are. What I was told was that my license would be suspended for a year in my district or my state. I have not heard anything. I've heard radio silence from my district, honestly. I got sent a Google Form exit interview, and that was the only thing I heard from anybody at my district. So I wish I had more information to kind of, this is what happened, or this is how you do it. It was kind of just, I was like, all right, well, I'm going.
Yeah.
Okay, no one cares, cool.
Yeah.
And that was kind of that.
I kind of have a hard time believing that they're going to actually take actions to suspend your teaching license because they're so desperate for teachers right now. NPR is covering and they're like, oh, you can make $200 a day as a substitute teacher, do a 2-day training. I'm like, this is a really bad sign.
Yeah.
If that's where we're at.
I always said as well. I always said there's no way they need teachers too separately. But I was told that my state was doing that kind of as like a deterrent to get people to keep like from quitting mid-year because they don't want them to quit and then go to a different school. So I guess I'll let you know if it happens.
But nanas, that's all I have to say about it. Just make it a profession that people want to stay in. So punitive. But it's just mirroring the same actions that we take toward education as citizens and in the government. So anyway, Yesenia, are you ready?
Hi, everyone. My name is Yesenia Lawrence, and I am an instructional designer / learning experience designer is my official title at the American Medical Association in Chicago. I taught for Chicago Public Schools for almost 8 years. Like Rachel, I left mid-year. I started my journey to instructional design in October of 2021. And then I landed a role at the end of January of this year. So for me, it was an intense process over the course of 4 months because I knew pretty much the second month of school that I wasn't going to be able to make it through the rest of the school year. I was already feeling pretty burnt out. And on top of all of that, I was finishing up a master's degree. And so naturally, it was during my last course that I decided to make the move. And so I was on my way to getting that master's and finishing up my action research project, but at the same time working on my transition. And throughout that time, I did a lot of upskilling. I created a portfolio. I reached out to anyone who was willing to chat with me on LinkedIn and established some really strong connections that I've maintained until this day. Um, Leaving in the middle of the school year was difficult for me. It wasn't a decision that I took lightly, and it was a move that I made because I knew that what I had going for me in the role and what I knew I was going to get out of it was worth it. Um, and it was especially complicated because I had a student teacher and she just started. And so I was leaving a student teacher in the beginning of her student teaching experience, um, which also made it difficult. And she was wonderful. Um, in terms of transitioning out of the classroom and into my role, I felt like my admin was generally supportive. I didn't get any sort of, mean looks or pushback or anything like that. It was pretty much, hey, I'm resigning. Thank you so much for your time. And they were like, thank you. Similar to Rachel, resigning from CPS was really easy. It was one form that I filled out online. And then my exit interview was not really an exit interview. It was just a reminder to make sure that I check in with the pension, I think it was, to figure out next steps for that. But in my current role, I am one of a team of 3. And what I do is a lot of consulting, reviewing, uploading materials. The American Medical Association has its own education center called the Ed Hub. So what physicians and medical students do is they'll go onto the Ed Hub to get CME credits, which is for their certification. And so I help get content up onto that Ed Hub so that they can get certified. Similar to what we do as teachers when we have to get, in Chicago, we call them CPDUs, but hours to maintain your license. You'll go to courses and then you log that you did those courses and then you get credits towards keeping your license for that year. At least that's how it works in Chicago. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. Unless Sharon, you have any other questions, I want to make sure there's time in the groups.
I'm really glad that you mentioned that you're working with a team. Maybe, I'll just leave it. I'll leave it for breakout rooms, because usually people, I think that it helps people to just put some contours to what is the job of an instructional designer, because it can look really different depending on the company or organization that you're working for. And I also work on a team. I'm not the person that's responsible for everything. And it working on teams slows down the process, which is fine. And it's a different skill set to know that you're not going to be doing everything, right? I feel like teachers, you're kind of like a one woman or a one man band sometimes, and you just do everything yourself. But it has been a growing experience for me to work on a team and be like, we have a graphic designer. I don't have to do that. Why am I doing this? And they'll like lovingly tell me like, we have people for that. And I'm like, let them do it. They're the experts. That's cool. But yeah, we can talk about that more in breakout rooms. What I wanted to make sure I share with you, have I seen you? Yeah, I have. I've seen you guys since I gave this presentation. I don't think I shared the link though. I gave a presentation at TESOL 2022. Oh, I hope this link works. Let me know if that doesn't work. But it's my slides. It's like 43 slides about getting started in a career in instructional design. And since I made the content and it's nice, share it for free, right? To help people. We have just a little bit of time. I'll just summarize, where I'm from, what I've done in case you want to chat with me during the breakout rooms. I have been in higher education since 2006, but I spent the first majority of my career in intensive English programs and in college ESL, specifically writing classes. And I needed a change in my job because a lot of reasons. Some of it's personal, like with just having 2 kids, and just I couldn't keep up with the workload anymore. And everyone seemed to just push back on me. Anytime I talked about it, they were like, well, this is industry standard. And I was like, well, industry standard sucks and doesn't work when you can't work every night of the week and on the weekends anymore. Thank you very much. And some of it has echoes back to what Rachel was saying. Rachel was talking a little bit about autonomy and like feeling like at a certain point in my career, especially as I started identifying as a mid-career professional, not like a novice teacher. Like I've been around the block, teaching 10 years plus and still having to like have these performance reviews that left me feeling like, am I any good at all? Like, I feel like I'm a pretty good teacher and my students seem to think so, but you're having a problem with me. So I don't really understand what's going on. A lot of things kind of came together to kind of push me towards looking into doing something else. So if you want to chat about that with me out here in the breakout rooms, I'm happy to chat with you. Okay, welcome back, everybody. I want to let you know when the next time is that we're going to have one of these networking sessions. Usually I try to have them on the first Tuesday of the month, but for June, that's not going to work out for me with some travel plans that I have. So we're actually going to do Tuesday, June 14th from 7 to 8 p.m. And I'm going to drop in the registration link into the chat in case you want to just go ahead and be registered because you don't want to forget it. We'd love to have you back then. I'm also going to hold these over the summer. So July 5th will be the day that we meet in July, and then August 2nd. Those will be the first Tuesdays of the month. All right, we're going to open it up for whole group Q&A. Feel free to unmute yourself, and I'll let Yesenia and Rachel answer before I say anything, unless they don't have anything to say, then I'll try to think of something to say. All right, any questions out there?
We were just getting onto it right when it transferred us back. So, and I could open this actually to anybody who's like writing a resume right now, if anyone has input on it. So in recrafting the resume, right, like rewording it, not making the teacher jargon, right, not saying teacher and students, it's learners and educator, that kind of stuff. That's cool. But something that Yesenia just touched on was try to use metrics, right? Try to use something that's like tangible or something that's numeric. And coming from, I teach mathematics, right? And I'm having a hard time finding a number that doesn't sound like I just made it up, right? Like, is it 78% of the learners pass their final exam, right? Like, what metrics and examples of metrics that people are using? Because I'm just really struggling with this. And like, our school utilizes iReady for gap closing, even in the high school, which is a gap closing program. So that gives me some numbers, but I don't know how other teachers are using it outside of like this many kids passed, you know?
Okay. Rachel or Yesenia, do you want to speak to that?
I don't know if Yesenia was adding anything else to that. I did growth, which is just something that my school looked at because I taught at a school where not a lot of students like met expectations, I guess, on those state tests. But I would just kind of use whatever data that your school already pulls. I'm sure they have it, right? I'm sure they make you look at it and study it. We do data dives, right? And I did growth of my students. So I was a part of, on my resume, I used growth of my whole ESOL program. So I just said, collaborated with a team of educators, something along those lines. And then I put the percentage of of overall growth that my students made. I think I just used 1 year. And then I used specifically for eSolids the WIDA test. So we used specifically that data. And thankfully I had my team lead was like really data focused, and so she had it all really easily for me. But I'm sure your instructional designer or someone at your school could give you that data, maybe of your math department or your specific students, and then you could look at proficiency levels. You could look at how many students met, or like you said, passed. I don't think there's anything wrong with using that, because that's kind of what we look at as educators, right? Is passed means they reach some level of proficiency. Or you could use that growth data as well.
I can add on a little bit from the higher ed perspective, because we did not have the enormous troves of data that K-12 has on their learners. So when I wanted to quantify things in my CV, what I ended up talking about were things like maybe a number of courses that I'd created, which was actually something that I did frequently. And they were like, hey, we got this group of, students at Saudi Arabia that can't write even letters. You're going to be creating a course for them. I'm like, okay, here we go. So I would put on that was the kind of thing that I would put on my resume. It was like, I created these courses, and they included, learning outcomes, so many activities, so many assessments. Never fails. Guess who's here, guys? Never fails. The 4-year-old. I'm sorry, 5-year-old now. Here he is again.
I can add.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, I feel your frustrations, because I was also having trouble, like, how do I quantify these things? Because this was the advice given to me too. And sometimes you just got to work with what you have. And I can just read a couple of bullet points off of mine. So one was analyze learner feedback, observational data, assessment data, and collaborated with stakeholders to evaluate the efficacy of an external research project that increased student achievement in over 90 learners from fall to winter 2021 semester. As you can see, like I said, increased student achievement in over 90 learners. It doesn't say exactly what that was. And most of my students struggled with these kinds of assessments. So I would say that growth is growth, kind of like what Rachel is saying. Like, it's not like you took kids from 0 to 100 in the year, but growth matters. As far as like quantifying leadership data, I said facilitated instructor-led training and provided ongoing support for 40 instructors on navigating the district LMS and other data management tools. That's when Chicago Public Schools rolled out the Aspen LMS, which kind of happened from one moment to the next and caused a lot of frustration. And I was part of the team that took the summer training that was like a week long, and then came back to the school and help instructors through certain functions in Aspen. And I think that during the interview, that was highlighted the most, because their questions were, how did you know what to teach or cover with such a huge system that has so many different things that you can do with it? And I was like, I understood who my learners were. These are teachers who need to know the basics their first week of school, take attendance, enter grades, put in some points. Like, they don't need to know how to filter with the martini glass and do all this other stuff that's on there. They don't need to know how to link their Google Classroom to their Aspen. I focused on what they needed in that moment. So I would also if you've done things like that, highlight it on your resume so you don't always have to include like student metrics, because you also want to demonstrate that you've made impact with adults in your building as well. Hopefully that helps.
The link that Nikki put in the chat takes you to Teaching a Path to Learning and Development, which is a great resource. It's also a LinkedIn group. And if you're not on LinkedIn, I encourage you to get started with that. I'm going to put a link to that Teaching a Path to L&D. I'm going to put that group, link to that group in the chat too, so you can get connected with that community.
That community is great. That's where I was able to get feedback on my resume and on my portfolio. So I'm not sure who the volunteers are right now because some of them have stepped away, but if you go, they have like an office hours part of their website, and you can sign up to meet individually with someone to discuss whatever it is you want to talk about.
Yeah, actually next month, the social media manager for Teaching a Path to L&D, Ricky Fisher, he's going to be one of our guest speakers next month. So you can look forward to that. Any more questions? Or if not, we can always end early. I'm always a proponent for going to bed earlier than later. I'm lame that way, but it's fine. Accept it. All right, that's it. We have reached the end of our time, and I am really, really grateful to have all of our guest speakers, Rachel and Yesenia. Thank you for sharing your time with us today. I am always so appreciative when people just volunteer their time to share their experiences, because it's a huge encouragement. And if you have been job hunting for, throughout the past year, just keep at it. It will happen. It will absolutely happen. I see it happen so many times on LinkedIn every day. Like people, I got a job, it finally happened. It will happen. And I wish you all good things in the next month. And I hope you come back here on June 14th. I'll be happy to see you again. Have a great night, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, thank you.